Hey, what's happening, guys? Good morning. You guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels. Today is Saturday, December 17th, 2022. We got Christmas just about a week away. Got a bunch of news, got a bunch of stories, and got a bunch of things to talk about in today's video. I know in a lot of these kind of daily videos where we cover the news about the economy and layoffs and what's going on in the world, some people might call it doom scrolling. It kind of tends to be negative news. I want to start covering kind of more diverse stuff. I don't necessarily even consider this negative news because it's all true, it's all factual, it all is going on around us. I think it's kind of silly to bury one's head in the sand and act like things aren't bad. But I don't just want everything to be doom. So I'm going to start including a lot of other things in here. Kind of like social media culture, interesting YouTube content. Some things that can maybe help you in business. There's 2 Google updates going on right now that we'll talk about as well. So I'm going to start kind of mixing some of that stuff in here as well. But let's just hop right on into it. So there is a new Netflix documentary called Don't Pick Up the Phone. I am a huge fan of documentaries. I like true crime documentaries. I like educational documentaries about history, science, geography, travel, all different types of things. And I do like Netflix documentaries, although I would say Netflix documentaries are kind of like the lowbrow documentaries, right? They have great production. They're kind of sensational, but I wouldn't necessarily say they're like a true documentary. But this one's called Don't Pick Up the Phone. It's kind of along the lines of like Bad Vegan and Kidnapped in Plain Sight. Basically the story behind this, and I'll try not to give any spoilers away. I'd recommend checking it out. It's like a 4-part series. And basically back in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was this guy who was calling fast food restaurants. He would pretend to be a police officer. He would say, we got a call. One of your employees stole a $50 bill out of some lady's purse, or one of your employees stole a man's wallet. We're going to need you to search this employee. And he would give a very general, vague definition, like a young girl with blonde hair. Pretty much every fast food restaurant is going to have a young girl with blonde hair. So basically a lot of people probably hung up on him, but some of these managers would call the employee back into the office, and everybody talked about how like self-assured and confident and kind of calm that this, quote unquote fake police officer seemed, and they would just kind of follow whatever he said, and they would strip search employees. The story got really nuts. One of the first stories, first they have the manager strip search the employee. Pretty crazy. There are stupid people out there. There are some really gullible people. But then they had the girl naked doing jumping jacks, bending over, spreading her butt cheeks. And at one point, the McDonald's manager calls her fiance. The manager's like a 50, 60-year-old woman. She calls her fiance into McDonald's because she has to get back to work. So this guy's talking to the police officer, waiting for the police to arrive with this girl. He winds up spanking her, kissing her, and ultimately she winds up giving him a blowjob. And it's like, really, like, who in their right mind would think that a police officer is telling some 50-year-old man to have this 18-year-old girl give him a blowjob to prove that she didn't steal a $50 bill out of somebody's purse? And then later in the documentary, they kind of get into, they have, you guys remember that science experiment from the 50s or 60s, where they would have people come in and they would tell them, if this person answers a question wrong, you have to shock them. And, they couldn't see the person, but they could hear them. And the person would be screaming, "Oh my gosh, this is so painful, please stop." And the person conducting the study would say, shock them more, up the strength of the shock. And most people followed it. And kind of the message of the story was that most people are willing to follow orders and listen to authority, whether it's right or wrong. And that's kind of the excuse given for why a lot of these managers kind of went along with this. It's one of the most insane stories and documentaries I've ever seen. And again, I don't want to give any spoilers away, so we'll just kind of leave it at that. But it kind of got me thinking to the past 2 years, 2020 to 2022, and the Mexican beer cough. What would make police officers trample old women in wheelchairs with horses because, God forbid, their mask fell below their nose, or they're out in a public park when you're not supposed to be when you're not supposed to be in a park? What would cause neighbors to call the police or call the authority on their next door neighbor for, God forbid, having a barbecue or having family over to celebrate Christmas? What would cause police officers to beat people to the ground with batons because they're eating at a restaurant when they're not supposed to be eating at a restaurant? When you look at the things that police and various authorities did during the Mexican beer cough period, it's insane. It's wrong, and you wonder, why did people go along with this? But most people are willing to go along with what an authority tells them. And that's kind of I don't know if you guys make that same connection, but that's kind of a big connection that I made watching that movie. We've been seeing a lot of articles talking about how Gen Z is not tech savvy, which is odd because Gen Z grew up with iPads and social media and everything else. I think maybe we'll dig into this topic in another video, but here's my take on why everyone seems to think that Gen Z isn't tech savvy. Technology today is so easy, right? Like Gen Zers grew up with iPhones. Well, with iPhones, there's kind of built-in virus protection. There's a million apps. You can just talk to it and tell Siri to do things. You don't ever actually have to figure anything out. And when you think about technology, even 10 years ago, I remember before... So today, if you want to get internet on your laptop from your phone, it's as easy as hitting a button and just connecting to the wireless network on your phone. But back in the day, either that wasn't available or it was incredibly expensive. So I remember I had kind of a dead-end job. I had to work Saturdays, and I was kind of getting my business off the ground. I was trying to start blogs. I was trying to make money online. And my job had, pretty much 8 hours a day on Saturdays that I had nothing to do. And so I figured I might as well, kind of start businesses and start doing some of these things. Well, it wasn't as easy. My workplace didn't have Wi-Fi. A lot of places didn't have Wi-Fi back then. And if I wanted to get internet, I had to figure out this program, right? So there was this program, I think it was called like Clink 123 or something like that. But I had to download a program onto my phone. I had to download a program onto my computer. Then I had to, at all times, my computer had to be tethered to my phone with my phone charger, or I guess, a data cable might be a better word. In order to get internet, I had to be connected, and I had to have these two programs. There were constantly glitches and problems with the program. But it took a lot of problem solving for something as simple as getting internet. Back in the day, if you wanted music, if you wanted movies, it wasn't as easy as I'll just open a Spotify app or open a Netflix app. You actually had to download, LimeWire or whatever other program. You had to download torrents. There was a lot of like kind of problem solving and a lot of like having to play with things and tinker with things to get movies and to get music and to get internet. Back in the day, you couldn't watch porn safely without getting viruses. So you'd watch porn, you get a virus on your computer. You'd have to figure out how to either get rid of the virus or you'd have to wipe your computer and reinstall everything. But just like operating on the internet back in the day, you had to figure some things out. It required some tech savviness. And today, everything is so user-friendly that you don't really develop those problem-solving skills. So that's my take on why people are saying Gen Z isn't savvy, but I've been seeing a lot of articles about that coming out. Just kind of a message, get your house in order, get in shape physically, financially, and spiritually. You got to be mentally tough. Things are going to get bad. In the past day, we've had the Dow down 1,600 points in the last 4 days. Bitcoin's down $700. I think I had some numbers of where crypto is right now. What was it? Bitcoin's down to 16,600. Ethereum 1,170. BNB 237. Dogecoin 7 cents. And before I continue on, while we're on the topic of crypto, my buddy Brian Phobos, who I really enjoy his YouTube videos, I really enjoy his takes on crypto. He hadn't made a video in a while, but he put out 3 videos yesterday. So check out his channel, Brian Phobos. Let's see. We keep seeing articles about how recession fears grow. I think most of us would agree we are already in a recession. It's probably a depression or a total collapse that we should be fearing. Without the Fed, the markets are in trouble, and it doesn't look like the Fed is coming to rescue us. And that seems to be the case with banks globally. These days, the market, again, I've talked about this a lot, the market is completely disconnected from reality. The market doesn't move on what's going on in the economy or what happens with a company. It moves on what Jerome Powell says. Hopefully, the Fed can get out of the way and just let things crash. Yeah, it's not going to be fun. Yeah, it's not, it's going to be ugly, but we need it to happen. Been seeing a lot of articles about this. We've been seeing articles about this for a while, but over 80% of adults don't meet strength guidelines. Over 80% of young people aren't qualified for military service, even with the new waivers on drug use, not requiring a high school diploma, having tattoos, all these other things. 80% of people are in such terrible shape, either physically and or mentally, that they don't qualify to serve in the military. And what does that mean for the future of our country, especially when we insist on running around the world, controlling other countries, having our military, on the border of Ukraine or in Ukraine? We want to be everywhere, but we don't even have any people who are qualified to be soldiers. And really, who would even want to serve in the military today? Traditionally, the military has been a very masculine place, right? Like today, it would probably be called toxic masculinity. But the military has traditionally been people from rural areas, tough people, farmers, patriots, Americans. I think most people would probably lean more conservative or libertarian in their values. And if you look at the military now, everything's, we're cutting trans birthday cake we're cutting a rainbow birthday cake to celebrate the birthday of the trans movement. We're doing TikTok dances. And, just the military has gotten so woke and so crazy that the people who would traditionally want to serve in the military, I would think are very, very put off by the military. Also, we have our government willing to give hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine. Biden's giving tens of billions of dollars to South Africa to stop using coal. Biden's giving tens of billions of dollars to Africa to get African women to be computer programmers and coders. We literally had the military not too long ago telling military members, sorry, we're not paying you enough. Maybe you should get on food stamps. We have all this money to send all over the world, and we don't even care that our military personnel are making enough money to take care of their families. And who would sign up for that? Who would want to go for that? And then also, if you just look at Joe Biden, does Joe Biden is a commander-in-chief. Does he instill confidence? Is he a leader? Is he somebody you would want to trust your life to? Absolutely not. So on top of the fact that most young people aren't qualified to serve in the military, I don't know why any young people would want to serve in the military. And just in terms of, getting mentally tough, getting physically tough, getting spiritually tough. I was watching a video from, there's a YouTube channel called Entrepreneurs in Cars. It's kind of part entrepreneurship, kind of part, men's issues and dating and things like that. But he was talking about a call from Dave Ramsey, and this guy called up the Dave Ramsey show. His future wife or fiance had to leave her job because she's morbidly obese and has really bad diabetes. And she can get on Cobra insurance, but it's going to cost $800 a month. So he's wanting to take a financial hardship withdrawal from his 401k. And we've talked about how those financial hardship withdrawals from 401ks are hitting all-time highs. But he wanted to take that out. And it just kind of goes to show, if you don't take care of your body, if you aren't in physically good shape, potentially you're not going to be able to work. It's going to be a huge financial burden on you because now this woman has to pay $800 a month for Cobra. It was just kind of a crazy and kind of sad story. If you guys are wanting to, challenge yourself, get mentally tough, I've talked about this before. There's a guy named Jesse Itzler. He's been on a lot of the, self-improvement podcasts and things like that. Very successful businessman. I think he was a white rapper in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken. But he talks about every year doing something called an unagi. And an unagi is some type of challenge that you do once a year. And it can't be something that's easy. It has to be something that you're almost more likely than not to fail. Or at least it should be something that maybe you have a 50% chance of succeeding in. But the idea is, if you can do this amazing feat that you didn't think you'd be able to do, you kind of show yourself how much is possible. And even if you fail, you're probably going to do a lot more than you thought you could ever do. If you guys are wanting to challenge yourself, there's something called the 75 Hard Challenge. You can Google it, but basically what it is, you got to do 2 workouts a day. One has to be outside, and each one has to be, I believe, an hour. You got to drink a gallon of water a day. You got to read 10 minutes a day. You got to take a progress picture of yourself every day. And there was one more thing. Oh, and you have to follow some type of diet. There's no specific diet that you have to follow. It could be keto. It could be low calorie. You could go vegan for the month, but you have to follow some kind of diet. And if you fail at any point during this thing, you got to go back to day one and start over again. I believe another rule is no alcohol as well, but that's called the 75 Hard Challenge. If you're looking to challenge yourself, if you're looking to show yourself how much you're capable of and kind of want to put yourself to the test, that may be a fun thing to do. Let's see. Recession. Okay, so we talked about that. Talked about 80% of adults not meeting military standards. More layoffs are coming. Big Commerce just did layoffs. Thumbtack just did layoffs. Goldman Sachs is laying off 8% of their workforce on top of telling their workforce don't expect a Christmas bonus. I challenge you guys, just do a Google search. Do a Google search on the word layoffs and then hit, Google News, and you'll just see all the news stories about layoffs. And it's kind of crazy. You see, an article, Utah tech companies do mass layoffs. This college is laying people off. This hospital is laying people off. The layoffs are spreading outside of the tech and mortgage and real estate industries, and they're starting to hit other industries. Let's see. Majority of Americans are saying the economy is going to be worse in 2023, and 2/3 of Americans are saying the country is headed in the wrong direction. One thing you got to keep in mind: mentality can move markets. When people feel like they're in a recession or when a recession is coming, they start tightening their belts, and when they start tightening their belts, they start spending less money, and that hurts other businesses who then need to lay people off. And it's almost people's mentality can kind of I don't know if it can shape markets or shape the movement of markets, but that at the very least it can make something happen sooner than it would otherwise, and I think we're at that tipping point. The housing market, oddly enough, I know a lot of people are hoping for a housing market crash so that they can get into their first home. I think the market may just wind up going sideways as interest rates continue to get higher and higher, and they already are high. People who have locked in mortgages at 2% or 3% rates, they're not going to want to sell. I think you also have people at today's rates not wanting to buy. So you have people not wanting to sell. You have people not wanting to buy. If nothing gets bought or sold, comps don't really change, and prices don't really change. So I think real estate may just kind of wind up kind of going sideways for the most part until rates start coming down. But I am seeing price cuts near me. I am seeing homes sit on the market for longer near me. I'm guessing unless you really, 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 really have to move, you'll just choose to stay in place. And maybe prices will come down for the people who are desperate and just have to keep dropping the price until they sell. But generally speaking, I think most people aren't going to be buying and most people aren't going to be selling. We got TSA checkpoint data showing that fewer and fewer people are traveling. We got other news that Starbucks is planning a 3-day walkout at over 100 different stores. Now that we're into December, we have November retail sales numbers. Retail sales numbers fell 0.6%. If you adjust for inflation, this is probably more like a 20% downturn. During the Black Friday, or I guess immediately following Black Friday and Cyber Monday, I was saying, sales are actually down. Sales aren't up. We're being told this is the biggest and greatest Black Friday sales numbers ever. And I just don't believe it. And I said, they're saying numbers are up like 0.3%, which turned out to be a lie. They're actually down 0.6%. But they were saying sales numbers are up 0.3%. But I said, look, if inflation is, according to the government, 9%, and sales are up 0.2% or 0.3%, that actually means sales are down 8 or 9%, because if the same number of customers or same number of shoppers went out and bought things this year as last year and everything's costing 9% more, to me that means it's a 9% loss. We know that true inflation is much higher than the 7% or 9% the government says. So I think we actually had about a 20% pullback in sales numbers for November. And again, November should be one of the busiest shopping months of the year. And these numbers kind of fly in the face of the narrative that this was the biggest and greatest Black Friday that we've ever had. You guys may have heard me talk about, there's a YouTube channel called Soft White Underbelly that I like a lot. I've been following the guy since he had like 5,000 subscribers. And the channel has blown up. I think he's got over 1 million at this point. He interviews people from interesting areas of life. Now, it kind of started off as him interviewing homeless people on Skid Row, but he's kind of expanded out, and he'll interview criminals and bank robbers and someone who survived a failed skydiving accident. I think that's one of the newer episodes. He just interviews a lot of people with a lot of interesting stories. He's a former photographer, so the very kind of good like cinematography. He takes these good portraits of people. And he was recently on the Joe Rogan show. It was a good episode. I'd recommend checking it out. They kind of did get into the homeless crisis going on in California as well. But it's just kind of interesting to see, a guy who starts out of some studio on Skid Row, and starts with a couple thousand YouTube subscribers, and he blows up to millions of subscribers and winds up on Joe Rogan. I thought that was kind of cool. Ford has hiked the price of the F-150 Lightning up 40%. They were selling at $39K. They'll now be selling at $55,000. The Senate unanimously passes a bill to ban TikTok on government devices. Rarely these days do we get any bipartisan efforts on anything, but, Republicans and Democrats came together to ban TikTok on government devices. We've also seen a number of lawsuits coming from different states on how TikTok is collecting data and TikTok collecting data on kids. TikTok, the FTC actually recommends that if you have TikTok on your phone, not only do you delete TikTok from your phone, but you throw away your phone and go buy a new phone. Now, I don't see a lot of people doing that, but the point here is that, we're seeing kind of a massive movement against TikTok, and I wouldn't be surprised to see TikTok entirely banned in 2023. At the very least, TikTok may have to either change ownership or become more transparent about what type of data they collect and where they store this data. Because essentially, TikTok is a wing of the Chinese Communist Party, and we're basically giving all the data of Americans to the, I guess in theory, our enemy. Let's see. Japan is dumping treasuries. China dumped $24 billion in treasuries. It's becoming clear that the BRICS nations or the BRICS countries aren't really going along with the games that America is playing with sanctioning Russia, with what's going on in Ukraine, with all of this stuff. And I think it won't be that long until the dollar kind of loses its standard as the currency of the world. Will it become the Chinese yuan or the Russian ruble? Will it become some gold-backed currency? But the rest of the world is kind of starting to catch on to the games that the U.S. plays with the dollar, and they want to get off the ride. Let's see here. So here's just kind of a interesting kind of personal anecdotal example. So I recently went to Fogo de Chao. If you've never been to Fogo de Chao, it's kind of similar to Texas de Brazil. It's one of these Brazilian steakhouses where you have a card, red on one side, green on the other. And the servers just come around with skewers of meat on swords. And it's like all you can eat. They have an amazing salad bar. Well, one interesting thing that I noticed is when we first sat down, all the waiters came out around to our table. So, one person had sausages, one person had picanha, one person had ribeye, another person had bacon-wrapped filet, another person had bacon-wrapped chicken, pork ribs, beef ribs. But they hit us one time, and then they never came back to our table again throughout the entire meal. And previously, it would just be nonstop, these waiters and waitresses walking through the restaurant with their meat out. Waiters walking around with their meat out. But previously, they were just nonstop walking around, and you would leave the place super stuffed. You could definitely tell that they made a concerted effort to, when a new table was seated, all of the different meats would come out to the table, they'd serve one time, and then they would never come back. Now, if you saw a server walking around with something and you wanted seconds or you wanted more, you might be able to flag them down, or if they were serving a table next to you, you might be able to wave them down and get another serving. But it almost seemed like the servers were trying to ignore you, like they'd hit the new table and then scurry back to the server station. And I don't know, just kind of my impression of it was that they're trying to save on food costs. Now, one thing I will say in their defense, we know that meat prices are up like 40%. So it's interesting to me that the prices, these places have never been cheap. I think Fogo de Chao years ago was maybe $50-$55 per person. I think now it's $64.99. And we're talking over a number of years, not even just since the Mexican beer cough. But I was pretty impressed that they've managed to not have to hike prices. I don't know how many people would go in and pay $100 for a meal, if they did wind up raising prices that high. But I was impressed that they haven't raised prices that much, but you can definitely tell that they're trying to save on food costs. Couple stocks that I've been buying up a little bit. I'm sure things are going to continue to collapse more for the next year, so maybe I'm buying in early. But I've been buying up Rumble. I think Rumble could be, I don't want to say a serious YouTube competitor and that it could overtake YouTube, because I don't think that's going to happen. But to date, we've had a lot of people try to compete with YouTube over the years, and all have been complete failures. I am starting to see more large content creators go over to Rumble. And even just regular, smaller YouTube creators, a lot of people are realizing that their videos are getting taken down. They're being censored on YouTube. YouTube plans on continuing to crack down on a number of niches in 2023. And you are starting to see more and more people, at the very least, using Rumble as a backup. I saw Smith & Wesson stock was down quite a bit the other day. They pay a decent dividend, over 4%. So I picked up some Smith & Wesson stock. And then I kind of like the tobacco stocks, Philip Morris, Altria, British American Tobacco. I just did pretty well on Swedish Match Company, which I think makes some of those like coconut tobacco snuff things. And they recently got bought out by Philip Morris. So that was actually a good play. Not only do most of these tobacco companies pay really good dividends, but ultimately, if marijuana is federally legalized, I think these companies are going to wind up being the big players. Let's see. Already talked about Bitcoin and crypto prices. Okay, so we got a Zero Hedge article. Here comes the shock. Apparently, according to the Federal Reserve of Philadelphia, the job numbers were overstated by 1.1 million. So we've been hearing about how great job numbers are. Now, we know in reality that most of these jobs are low-wage service sector jobs, hospitality jobs, jobs that nobody wants. Also, a lot of these jobs are, people taking on second and third jobs. But we've also recently learned that 1.1 million of these jobs were fake, or the numbers were bad. The U.S. government has moved the infantry within a mile of the Russian border. It seems like things are heating up in Russia. I saw somebody say an interesting thing the other day. I think it was one of the Rothschilds said, if Putin loses, the New World Order is doomed, or globalization is doomed, and the New World Order is doomed. I know a lot of people support Ukraine and what's going on. I've told you guys, check out a YouTube channel called, every time I try to mention, I can't remember. Something zero. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I've talked about it on previous videos. If you guys remember, somebody drop it in the comments. But basically, the guy interviews people who have, like, Americans and people from all over the world who've gone to fight over in Ukraine. And I think you get a very balanced view of what's going on because he supports Ukraine. He wants to share these stories of people who are fighting for Ukraine, but he also doesn't bury his sand, and he doesn't bury his head in the sand, and he acknowledges that Ukraine has a lot of corruption and Ukraine has a lot of problems. But it was interesting to me that one of the Rothschilds said the global the global reset, or all these things that the WEF talks about. If Russia wins, this is all over. And when you kind of start to think about it, most people who I disagree with fundamentally on most issues are all supporting Ukraine, right? Nancy Pelosi, the kind of militant trans movement, far left liberals, people who tried to push the vaccine on people, like all of these people really support Ukraine. And it's like, if all these people who kind of hate me and my way of life and want like a global currency reset and want a new world order, if all of these people are supporting Ukraine, there's the old saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. It kind of makes me question what's going on over there. There are 2 new Google updates going on. We got the helpful content update, which rolled out around December 4th. That is meant to kind of reward content written for humans by humans, not AI content and not content written specifically for search engines. So if all your blog posts are 500 words with 3% keyword density, Google can kind of tell what's natural and unnatural, and that may not be a good thing. Also, about a week after that, we got the link spam update. Which is like, if you're buying links, if you're a site if there's a website whose only purpose is to hand links out to other sites, like, you're not necessarily going to be penalized, but if you have a website and you've purchased links or you've gotten links from questionable sites, you may wind up losing some of that link juice, and you may wind up, losing some of your places, some of your search rankings on page 1 of Google or page 2 of Google. Google has also updated their EAT policies. When we talk about like how Google decides what to show on search engines, Google has always followed something called EAT, which stands for expertise, authority, and trust. Well, they've now added experience. So what does that mean? If you write blogs, if you can take unique pictures as opposed to using stock photos, something like that will go a long way. Rather than talking in the third person, talk in the first person. If you're doing product reviews, show that you actually own a product, you've actually used a product, etc. I'm not going to go too into depth on that, but we could do a whole video on that if you guys want. In Twitter news, Elon Musk has banned the account of the kid with the flight tracker. So much for free speech. Elon Musk is now banning journalists who write bad things about Elon Musk, Twitter, or Tesla. Elon Musk has also banned the Mastodon account, which Mastodon is like a shitty competitor to Twitter. It's kind of funny. When Elon Musk first took over, I was like, okay, this guy's forced free speech. That's kind of a cool thing. I did think it was kind of unfair how the media as a whole and other social media platforms were all kind of attacking him. But it's looking like Elon Musk may not be any better than the previous owners of Twitter. Twitter is rolling out a new system of check marks for businesses. And they're also rolling out community notes so that everybody on Twitter can be a fact checker. Let's see. Democrats urge Facebook and Meta to keep Trump banned. We're also starting to hear that internally at Meta/Facebook, a lot of employees and especially a lot of higher ups are worried that Mark Zuckerberg's obsession with the metaverse is going to wind up killing Facebook. You guys have probably been hearing a lot about like AI art and ChatGPT. ChatGPT might be kind of cool for some kind of marketing, blogging, web purposes. It's worth checking out. Google ChatGPT. Check it out. I'm not going to ramble about it too much. Let's see. Some of this news is actually news I didn't cover from the other day, so I'm going to kind of skip this. Retail sales, Goldman Sachs cutting bonuses. We got more job losses from Zendesk. Bank of Canada says expect job losses like 2008. BuzzFeed employees were laid off. This is kind of interesting. The city of Milwaukee is buying up $2 million worth of homes to keep them out of the hands of out-of-state investors. We've learned that Chase Bank plans on dumping $1 billion into the depressed real estate market to buy up rental properties and try to keep everybody renters. Klaus Schwab and a WAF want to kill your dog or cat. They say having pets is too much for the planet. We need to kill all the pets to fight climate change. My buddy Jay Coppola had told me about this the other day. He told me a guy who works at his local gas station has a side hustle donating plasma. He's making $2,000 a month, which is pretty crazy. I know my grandma's hairdresser makes like $1,000, $1,200 a month donating plasma. I hate needles. I could never get on board with that. Another thing, like people who are constantly donating plasma, I don't know what the science is on this, but it just strikes me that it can't be healthy to constantly be depleting your body of plasma. 57% of people say it's harder to afford gifts this year. More people are not buying Christmas trees, and more people are not planning on having big Christmas dinners or planning on cutting things out of their Christmas dinner. There was an FDA meeting the other day that said we were misled about the Pfizer vaccine. Heart attacks are 71% higher than any other vaccine in history. And at this meeting, they said that the vaccine killed 2 people for every 1 person saved. We've learned that growing obesity is a problem. We kind of talked about that above in regards to the military. And this is just kind of interesting. You guys may have heard that. I mean, it's a sad story. Celine Dion has a rare neurological disease. And it just so happens that, I'm not saying that this is what caused it, but it just so happens that this disease that Celine Dion has is listed as a Pfizer side effect. We heard about Donald Trump's stupid NFT cards, right? Donald Trump had talked about how he had a big announcement. People are like, is he going to announce his VP for president? Like, what's he going to announce? This must be some important announcement. You can now buy a Donald Trump NFT trading card for $99. How fucking stupid is that? Donald Trump is really nothing but a grifter. But he sold out in like less than 24 hours. We recently learned that Zelensky's wife was seen in France on a $40,000 shopping trip, all the while that he's begging for more money from the rest of the world and more support. Tucker Carlson came out the other day. He said he saw internal CIA files and is claiming the CIA killed Kennedy. Zero Hedge job losses tumbled to 3-month lows. Home flippers are worried about their home flips. Home flipping profits fell 18% last month. Costco's raising membership prices in January. We've learned that a half of millennials are living at home with their parents. On average, people 18 to 29 living at home with their parents are paying less than $500 a month to live at home, and they're choosing to spend their money on video games, going out to bars and restaurants. 63% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. This really isn't different. 10 years ago, something like 57, 58% of Americans were living paycheck to paycheck. So this isn't necessarily some sensational new change, but it's kind of scary, and it doesn't seem like we have a healthy society and a healthy economy when 63% of people are living paycheck to paycheck. Zelensky wants Russian athletes banned from the Olympics. An Oregon judge bans high-capacity magazines, and they have a gun ban that requires you undergo training and get a license to have a gun. That was recently put on hold by a higher court. We talked about the F-150 Lightning going up. And we also got a recent study that came out that says that unvaccinated people are more likely to be reckless and cause traffic accidents. So, this push to get everybody vaccinated is still in full force, it seems. We're over 30 minutes into this video. Today's news wasn't like the most interesting news ever. We had a couple interesting stories here. If you guys enjoyed today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button down below. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.